Be wary of extremely rationalizing your spiritual experiences. Now, if you've been through this for some time, you already have a feeling, your intuition may be telling you that balance is the key, right? And this goes for everything in life, including the idea that you need to process every little thing that happens in your life. Of course, you need to process, but what I'm talking about here is the action of not only trying to find meaning in every little thing, but to to make something more, to make something bigger than it is, for the sake of truly dissecting it. Now, in a sense, yes, that's a good thing to do. It is good to dissect stuff, and we don't actually have a choice in what we do decide to dissect in our lives or not. And then I say dissect here, I mean there are some things, certain experiences that we are meant to go through. They they can happen through us just living our life, but they can also happen through us digging deep, doing self-inquiry, writing about the emotions that permeate that experience and so forth. But I think there's a point where you may tend to want to externalize everything. But the reason you're doing that is not actually to process something, it is just to run away from the present moment again, to run away from the pain that you may be feeling. Yes, it's good to talk about the pain with a therapist or with yourself or writing about it, but if you catch yourself doing that every time the pain appears, you may be doing that to run away from it. And that's not an issue as well. It's just part of the experience. What I'm pointing here is to bring some perspective around this subject, this matter. This video can be seen a portal of self-reflection. There's no right and wrong per se, but there are things that brings us closer to God, and there are things that pull, or that make God be less present in our life, or godliness, if you want to talk about meaning behind the words. You can say that God is everything, so God is never actually separated. But yes, there is this. We live in a 3D world that there is this feeling of separation, and based on our actions, this feeling of separation can be modified. You can tune into more to feel less separated from things or from God, and vice versa. And in my experience, we tend to be more separated from God when we um, want to be separated from our emotions. Now, I'm not talking about separate separation in terms of detachment. No, I'm talking about separation in terms of actively running away from your shadow, from your pain, from the things that you need to look in the eye. And you may be someone who identifies patterns in every little thing. You may have a very racy mind, a very perceptive mind, and that's okay. Not only is okay, it's very good. It makes you learn faster. Not that this is a race or anything, but a higher perspective or perception m- means that you don't actually have to commit the same mistake twice in order to learn, or even commit the mistake initially at the first time in order to realize that there's something that is not meant for you. A higher perception allows you to stop yourself from committing mistakes that other people have committed, or it simply allows yourself to intuitively perceive what is it that you actually are doing in this life. But a higher perception with a rather racy mind also makes you susceptible, is that the word, to be aware of your own higher awareness. And if your ego is not kept in check, it will always try to, appropriate the experience, to take intellectual, to make your experience an intellectual property. Can I talk like that? What I'm saying here is that every realization that you have, especially when your perception looks inward and realizes how much it perceives, the ego tends to come and, and it tends to think, damn, I'm smart. I'm smart. I'm different. It tends to put you into separation mode again. And that needs to be kept in check. And I guess you go through a phase where you don't actually recognize that, and your ego may become inflated because of it, but it's like a balloon. It's gonna pop at some point. When you start to think, uh, like when you start, putting yourself in a pedestal, life has a way of, sweeping you off your feet in a negative way, in a humbling way. And I guess you go through this sometimes, a few times, until you realize the pattern. Every time I appropriate the experience and I start thinking too highly of myself, I tend to be humbled. You can treat this as superstition, but I mean the patterns are there. You just need to learn to see it, right? I'm talking about superstition because I mean I remember when I was a kid, and up until this day, every time I started playing a game with other people, I never started commemorating before actually winning, because every time that I started commemorated before winning, something happened to change the way of the game, the direction that the game was going. Yeah, this can be superstition or not, but does that make sense to you? I mean, if you're watching this video until this point, you may already be completely aware of what I'm talking about here. But these videos are being done for the purpose of bringing perspective for stuff that you already know. It's not like, it's like this. Your perception starts increasing more and more, and once that's done, and that's never done, right? At least not, I think not, or I feel not. But there really isn't much to talk about afterwards. But yeah, when the time comes where you feel the need to talk about stuff, you talk about it. So I'm not even sure why I'm saying this. I guess this, what I'm talking about now, points to the idea that this is a dance, right? This is something that you are in it, whether you like it or not. You are in a big crock pot. That's I don't know if crockpot is a good example, but think of a pan that is being mixed, right? You're in the middle of this mix, and you are there whether you like it or not, and nothing you do is going to stop you from being mixed. And the mixing here can be used as an analogy to talk about this spiral of life that is life, right? Which is, we go through layers of experiences, and each layer awakens something in us, makes us realize our true nature deeper and deeper. And this is a process I have been finding is not so much as something that you can choose to do, it's just something that happens to you. But at the same time, if you zoom into your life, you will be granted the possibility of making decisions that are going to impact you positively or negatively, in the sense of making you feel closer or further away from God. And what I'm talking about is not in a derogatory sense where being further away from God is bad. No, not necessarily. It's just not pleasant. It's just, I don't feel good, doing stuff that makes me feel more separated. But sometimes I do it anyway, and I always tend to regret it or realize that you probably shouldn't do that again. See you next video.